Night in the city can be a great time to get your camera out and take some pictures. There's lots of things going on in the city. There's lots of light in many cities. Now I know that in some areas the cities start to get dark and close down after 9, but you can still get out before that. But in other places such as New York, Las Vegas, and any of the really big cities, you'll often have opportunities to shoot interesting scenes well into the night and can be fascinating to do. Now, when you're doing that, there's a lot of considerations and a lot of things to look for, a lot of things that we've been talking about. Now, here's a picture that it was shot in New York City. And there's lots of things that are going on in it. And if you look at some of the things that are happening here, one thing that you might see right away are these little starburst patterns. There's a starburst pattern coming up down here. There's some other ones in the picture that come from the bright lights. A lot of times people wonder about how do you get those starburst patterns. It's actually not very hard to do. You need to be able to hold your camera very steady because you need to shoot at a slow shutter speed because you're going to be stopping your lens down. If you stop your lens down to f11, f16, depends on the particular lens, you will get this pattern. It's a diffraction pattern because what happens is this very bright light comes through your lens and it comes through the small lens opening of your f-stop and it diffracts along the diaphragm blades. And that's where this pattern comes from. You get this starburst pattern. You can also get this starburst pattern with the sun during the day. But at nighttime, it's really cool when you're getting a scene like this because you got all these bright lights that are giving this pattern. Very, very cool. The other way to do this, if you ever want to try this, is to just simply put something in front of your lens that will create that pattern. There are filters. There are starburst filters that can be used. In addition, if you want to just experiment a little bit with it, you can go take a piece of screen. If you get a piece of a silvered type of a screen, black isn't going to help you because it's going to just dull the scene. But with a piece of silvered screen, you'll actually get some diffraction occurring along the metal or the wiring that's used for that screen. So if you want to try that, experiment it, it works. In addition, like I said, is just stop your lens down, which was done for this picture. Now, other things to look for, obviously, we have some contrast issues. This shot, I was shooting without a tripod. But I had a beanbag. I talked about the beanbag, and that was so important because I braced the camera against a little stand. It was a newspaper, one of these stands that sits beside the road, the street there. Braced it, pushed it hard against there, and I had a couple second exposure without any problem at all. Now I had to increase my ISO a little bit because I couldn't afford to go a really long exposure. That's hard to hold a camera still if you're going to try to do a 10-second exposure, for example. But a couple of seconds, you can do it. And if you don't, you'll see it right away on your LCD. You'll say, okay, I didn't get the shot, so I'm going to try it again. So that worked pretty cool, but there is a little bit of noise, and I did get a little bit of noise in some of the dark areas of the building and in the sky, but I reduced that with a noise reduction software, and the picture looks pretty good. Now, in that same night when I was out photographing, I came across another scene, and this scene was interesting to me because it had been a foggy night and it had been a lot of rain, and so the streets were wet. That's a cool thing. You can actually see the reflections of light that are on the street that come because the street was wet. Whenever you have a wet street, that's really cool. Now you can tell this was a fairly fast shutter speed because if you look closely, you can see actually the guy is yawning. You can see there's some people in some other areas in the frame, and it's not just pure blur. There was some movement. And I was able to do this by shooting at a high ISO and shooting with a wide-angle lens. Wide-angle lens allows me to shoot at a slower shutter speed and get sharp, and shooting wide open with the f-stop. So I'm not stopping the lens down much. Now, you can see there's a little bit of a starburst pattern on this. That's because this particular camera was not a full-size digital camera like this. It was actually a compact advanced compact digital camera. It was very easy to carry along. I didn't have a lot of camera gear with me. Sometimes I like to travel with just a small camera like that. But these small cameras have rather small lenses, which means that even their wider f-stops as they stop down are fairly small compared to a bigger camera like this one. So having that smaller f-stop means you get a diffraction pattern even when you haven't stopped your lens down a lot. Now, if you want to get that consistently, you need to stop your lens down, particularly for a digital SLR. But I liked what was going on. I loved the colors. I loved the activity, the people, all the stuff that was going on. And I was able to do that. Again, I was hand-holding, shooting the fastest shutter speed I could, bracing myself, taking a breath, and then releasing and just casually shooting. And it came out very cool. And you can do this. And it is very possible. But I will guarantee occasionally you will get pictures that will be blurry because it's going to happen. So you take more than one picture. And one little trick actually is sometimes I will set the camera to continuous, and then I'll just hold it down. I'll take 1, 2, 3, 4 pictures right away. And very often, I'll get maybe most of them will be slightly blurry, but one of them will be sharp. Also, you have to tolerate under these conditions some noise. And there's no question that this picture has some noise. There's actually some noise up in the that banner of the panel for the building, and then up around these lights there's a little bit of noise in the sky. But it kind of gives the feeling, a little bit of this gritty night feeling that doesn't bother me at all, and otherwise I wouldn't have been able to get the shot. So sometimes that's what you do and you go after it. But a couple of interesting things of just street photography at night in a city.